Hey everybody, Scott Weichel. You're listening to My Kind of Country right here on Fish Creek Radio. As you all know, you've been listening to a series on my show about Merle Haggard's Strangers. We've been very privileged to interview many of the strangers from over the years that are still with us. But there's one gentleman that's passed away, and unfortunately, I never had the opportunity to interview him. And he was an integral part of the Merle Haggard sound and, of course, country music in general. One of the most influential guitar players of all time, Mr. Roy Nichols. I'm very happy to have his brother with us today to talk about the family's history in music and their wonderful memories and Gene's memories. Please welcome Gene Nichols to My Kind of Country. Gene, how are you tonight?
I'm fine.
Well, I sure appreciate you taking time to be on the show. It's a pleasure.
Well, thank you.
Well, let's start with your family history a little bit. I understand Roy was born in Arizona. Is that right?
Yeah, he was born in Phoenix.
Is that where all of you were from?
I was born in Tucson.
Okay, all right. Now, how many were in your family, Gene?
Oh, there were seven.
Wow, that's a big family.
Yeah.
Now, can you run down the names and tell me if they're still with us?
Yeah, that Roy, he's gone. And I was the second one. Third one was Loretta, she's still alive. And Jimmy was the fourth one, he passed away. Larry was fifth when he passed away. And Donna was the sixth when she passed away. And then Wanda is still living.
All right. So now, besides Roy and yourself, who else in the family was musical?
Jimmy.
Jimmy was.
Jimmy, he was second boy. Third boy.
Uh-huh. Did he play guitar as well?
Oh, yeah, he was a good one. He outplayed me 10-1. That's all he did. He was like Roy.
Well, that's great. Well, where did the music influence come from in your family?
My dad.
Mm-hmm.
My dad.
Was he musical?
He played the fiddle and the upright bass and the guitar.
Oh, wow.
He was quite the musician.
So what kind of music was going around your house when you were a kid?
It was country. Bob Wells, Texas Playboys.
Oh, yeah, of course. Now, did you make the move to California as well?
Yeah, just me and Roy and my mom and dad, we came out here, and then the rest of the kids were born here.
Oh, I see. Okay. And about when was that?
Let's see, I was 5, that must be 1940.
Oh, okay. Well, what led Roy to get into music on a professional basis?
Well, he just loved to watch my dad play, and for his 11th birthday, he requested a guitar, and they got him a guitar for his 11th birthday. And by the time he was 13, he was playing up a storm.
That's great. Well, I know that he played with Curly Roberts and the Rangers back when he was that age.
Yeah, that was one of his first big jobs. He actually played on the radio before then, KGST, Barney in Fresno. And at 14, he played on that radio show backing up different singers and stuff.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was just real good all at once. I couldn't believe it.
Wow, that's incredible. Well, Roy was about 16 years old when he met Fred Maddox of the Maddox Brothers and Rose. And
he was 17.
17? Okay.
Yeah.
And he was with them for, what, about a year and a half or so?
Yeah, I think he was with them about 2 years.
Okay. And I know he was on a bunch of the recordings and, of course, toured with them and played all the time.
Yeah.
How did he hook up with Lefty Frizzell?
Well, he went with a guy in Tulare, California first. Smiley Maxidon, he played with him for about a year and a half. Then when Lefty went through town, his guitar player was drafted, and Roy auditioned and got that job.
Wow, that's pretty cool. Well, of course, there's a famous story that Merle watched Roy Nichols play with Lefty in 1953 at the Rainbow Gardens, and
that's right. Yeah,
that was their first meeting.
Uh-huh.
And Roy was, of course, on the Cousin Herb Henson show there for a long time too in California.
Yeah, he was.
And tell me a little bit about the story of. I've heard this story about your grandfather throwing a stick at Roy when he was picking grapes.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. He was, Roy was jumping on me. He was two and a half years older than me. My grandfather always took up for the underdog.
Good old sibling rivalry. You gotta love it.
Yeah, he used to take us with him when he picked grapes a lot. He was really a good man, my grandpa.
Hmm. Wow, that's cool. Well, what was your relationship with Roy as far as playing music together? Did he kind of teach you stuff, or you taught him stuff, or how did that all work out?
Well, the things he did in the 50s and 60s, that's what I copied. But what he did with Merle pushing strings and all that stuff, I never could get it. But I copied Roy. That's what I did.
Mm-hmm.
And if I asked him, he'd show me. And when we was younger, when he'd come to town, he'd always come to when he played with Maxis, he'd always come home and get me, and then we'd go see his friends and stuff. Mm-hmm. We were real close at that time.
Uh-huh. And I understand he listened to some T-Bone Walker too, right?
Oh, that T-Bone was, he really liked T-Bone. T-Bone wasn't only blues. He was like jazz too. He could go either way. That's why Roy liked him so well. He was so versatile.
Oh, absolutely. Well, country music is kind of a melting pot of a lot of different kinds of music, so that it stands to reason that he would incorporate a lot of the, the blues and jazz into what he was playing in the country field.
Oh, yeah. Bob Wells, he had jazz musicians in his band.
That's right, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's absolutely right. And so Roy was working with Win Stewart when he was hired by Merle, is that right?
That's right.
How did that come about?
Well, Roy asked him for a job, I'm pretty sure. That's what I hear, that Roy told him he wanted to get out of Las Vegas. Roy had a problem with gambling. He liked to gamble. And he asked Roy for a job, really. I mean, he asked Merle for a job, and Merle hired him. Mm-hmm. That's what I heard. That might not be true. I'm not really sure on that, but I heard that.
Well, we were talking about Bob Wells and the Texas Playboys. Now, Roy played for Joe Holly for a while, too, right?
No, he didn't play for... I was the one that worked with Joe Holly for 8 years.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Roy... No, he worked with Curry Roberts. Curry Roberts had a bunch of the Bob Wells band when Roy worked with him, and Roy was 15 then.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell me about your experience with Joe Holly.
I worked with him for 8 years, and he got real good jobs. He got repeat jobs all the time because the people just loved him. He was quite the showman. He was always the best musician on the bandstand. The guy could really play. And he always got repeat jobs and stuff like that. And we were playing for they was having a election for the county sheriff, and we was playing for him one Saturday night. And the next Friday he went in the hospital with pneumonia, and he never got the machine off. And he was 69 years old.
Oh my gosh.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That's how he played right up until he got sick.
Wow, that's incredible. Now, were you guys doing kind of the Bob Wills style music then, or?
Oh, that's what we did. Yeah. Well, his son did some of the current stuff, but it was, I would say, over 50% Bob Wells. Mm-hmm. Twin fiddles. He had a fiddle player that played twins with him. Mm-hmm. Twin fiddles, and then me and steel player played twin guitars. It was mostly Bob Wells. Even on the new songs, it had the Bob Wells influence on it.
Sure, sure.
Mm-hmm.
So who else did you work with over the years then?
Oh, just other than Joe, just local people. Mm-hmm. Just, I never worked with anybody that really made it big, other than Joe Holly.
Mm-hmm. Are you still playing music, Gene?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm still playing. They still hire me, by the way.
Well, where do you make your home nowadays?
I'm in Fresno, California. California.
Oh, okay. Well, you never got too far from where it all started, huh?
Oh no, I never did. Well, I went to Modesto for 8 years and came back, and that was it.
Oh, yeah. I had a friend that used to live in Fresno and played at the Fresno Barn with Buck Owens. His name was Jerry Hendricks. He was a steel guitar player. This was back in the late 50s.
Jerry Hendricks, huh?
Yep.
That doesn't really ring a bell, but you know, you didn't know, did you know that Roy played with Johnny Cash for a while too?
He did. I did not know that.
Yeah, he played with Johnny Cash. Remember that song, the Tennessee Flat Top Box?
Sure.
That's Roy on that. That's Roy that did that on there.
Is that right? I didn't know that.
And Roy was working with him. Roy worked with him in 1960. Just before going with Wynn.
I'll be darned. I didn't know that.
Between Cousin Herb and Wynn, he worked with. I think he worked about a year with Johnny Cash.
Wow. Was he playing on the road with him too?
Yeah, he's on. They toured Canada at that time. Johnny Cash toured Canada a lot.
Oh, okay.
Up in Washington and Canada.
Wow, that's pretty amazing. Now, is that after Luther Perkins passed away?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay, so he kind of
No,
took.
I'm taking it back. No, it wasn't after. No, it wasn't. But Luther couldn't come up with a part with a guitar part on the Tennessee Flat Top Box, so Roy did it.
I'll be darned. Wow, I did not know that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, when Roy started working with Merle, a lot of the first sessions that Merle did, he had James Burton was playing the guitar on there.
James Burton did some recordings with Merle, but Roy left Merle and come to Fresno and played at one of the clubs in Fresno. He wanted a sit-down job for a while, and played for about 6 months in Fresno in a nice club here, and James recorded with him at that time.
Okay. Well,
I don't remember which songs James did with him, but he did do some recordings while Roy was gone.
Yeah, I know he played the original solo on Working Man Blues.
Yeah. I believe you're right on that one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think he did. No, I don't. I started to say. No, I better not say because I'm not sure. I was going to name another song that he played on Okie from Muskogee, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I think that would have been Roy by that time because that was.
That what probably would have been,
Yeah.
But he played on more than one. I'm sure of that.
Yeah, he certainly did. So Roy's, he certainly had, a distinctive sound, and over the years, it's been, copied and people study his sound and everything. When you hear Merle Haggard music, I mean, it's so closely associated with what Roy Nichols was doing on the guitar. Did he really realize the importance of what he was doing?
No, he really didn't. He was really humble.
So when it came along and he went to work for Merle Haggard, were you guys familiar with Merle Haggard, and did you kind of know that he was, on the uprise to become the big star that he was?
No, I didn't know Merle at all. I never did know. I went to a few of his shows, but I never did. I met him, but I didn't know Merle.
So what was Roy's opinion of Merle when he first started out?
He liked him. He liked him all the way. He said Merle was a fair guy. Paid well and was fair.
That's pretty incredible.
He never had bad words to say about Merle.
Well, he was certainly with him for a long time.
As a matter of fact, when Roy had his stroke, if Merle come through town to play in Fresno, in California, if he passed through Bakersfield, he always stopped in for a few hours. Always.
Wow. That's pretty amazing.
They were real good friends right till the end.
Tell me a little bit.
So tired of the road, he got burnt out.
Oh yeah, well he was doing it for a long time, even before Merle. That's a long career, there's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
Of course, he left the band in I think it was in 1987, right around there.
Yeah, you're right. That's pretty close.
And I know he did some recordings still after that, but then he had a stroke in I think it was about 1996. Am I right on that?
Probably. I don't know the exact date, but you're probably right on that. Yeah. That's about the right time because he passed away in 2002.
Yeah. What was it? What was it like when Roy had the stroke? Was he still able to play after that, or?
No, he wasn't able to play because his left side, he couldn't walk. His left side was, he couldn't move his legs or his arm on the left side. His left side went numb on him. He couldn't play anymore.
Oh, that's a shame. That's a shame.
Hmm. But it didn't seem to bother him that much. I mean, he still had a pretty good outlook. We used to go visit him about every other month. Me and my wife go down and visit him, and he didn't talk about not being able to play and stuff like that. He never brought it up.
Hmm. Well, maybe he had his fill when he retired,
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Well, tell me some stories about Roy as far as his personality and what kind of a guy he was.
Oh, he was real quiet. He was real reserved, real reserved. He wasn't a blowhard or nothing like that. He just more or less answered questions, and he didn't push the conversation at all. Mm-hmm. Jimmy was the one that was outgoing.
Well, tell me a little more about Jimmy.
Oh, he was really a fine guitar player. He could play just like Roy and Jane Burton. He could play just like them.
Wow.
Mhm. And everybody wanted to hire Jimmy.
Did he get into it professionally?
Oh, that's all he did.
That's all he did.
That's what he did for a living. He did. Have you ever heard of Kenny Surratt?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
He traveled Kenny for a couple of years.
Oh, okay.
Until Kenny went to Germany. Not Germany. I'm sorry. I believe it was England. And that's when country music was popular over there. Buck Owens was going over there and everything. Kenny Surratt was going over there, and Jimmy wouldn't go. So that ended that one.
I know Roy played Telecasters back in the early days, but he kind of switched to Gibson guitars later on. What was the reason behind that?
He liked the tone better and stuff like that. Telecaster is good for treble stuff like that. He went for the Les Paul Custom and for good tones and stuff.
Mm-hmm. What kind of amplifiers did he use?
The last time I saw what he was using was Fender twin reverbs.
Oh yeah, that was a popular amp.
Yeah, that's what the last thing I saw he wore. Matter of fact, the last time I jammed with him at his house before he had the stroke, he had a little guitar room set up in his house, and we played through a twin reverb then, so that's what he had at the end.
Mm-hmm. Did you keep up on his recordings through the years as he was working with Merle?
Well, I know he got a check every so often for the recordings he did on the songs he wrote himself. Like, you hear the song Street Singer?
Yep, absolutely.
Roy wrote that one.
Yep. Yeah, that was an instrumental. That was actually a #1 song. And very unusual that Merle had just some little talking part in it, but it became a #1 song. Of course, the Strangers had a whole series of solo albums out too.
Yeah, they did. They had about 4 of them out.
Yep. And great musicianship. I really thought that about the time that they had Bobby Wayne and Dennis Romack and Biff Adam playing along with Roy, I thought that was really one of the tightest groups I've ever heard.
That was a tight group. That was probably the best group Merle ever had. When Merle started adding a bunch of people, it wasn't so tight anymore.
Yeah, he kind of got into some different sounds. He did Dixieland for a while. He did the Western Swing thing for a while.
Yeah, he did, and he hired like a trumpet player, saxophone player. He even had a trombone guy at one time.
Yep, Mr. Gary Church. He's been on the show.
Yeah.
Well, I want to ask about.
You're right. When in the '70s, when he had that group you're talking about, Dennis Romack and Bobby Wayne, that was a tight group.
Yeah, those guys were fabulous. They've, of course, Dennis was
on.
Yeah,
Norm was good on the steel too.
Well, I was just going to bring up Norm Hamlet. He and Norm seemed to have a very, very special working relationship, and they played so well together, and they had a chemistry there.
Well, they knew each other when they were teenagers.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, when Roy worked for Smiley Maxson, Norm was just a teenager, and I think Roy was under 21, and that's when they first met, and they knew each other from then on.
Wow.
They jammed together and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, that the instrumental that they did called "Stealing Corn," I thought that was one of the greatest things ever.
That was really a good song. Yeah, I've got all that stuff. His wife put that all on CDs for me.
Oh, that's great. Do you have some rare recordings that Roy did that have never been heard before?
I don't. I don't know of anything that's never been heard before.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure they're out there.
He might. Yeah, he probably made recordings I didn't know anything about. He always lived in Bakersfield, and I lived here in Fresno.
Uh-huh. Well, tell me a little bit about the recordings that Roy did, as far as how they would develop the sound in the studio. Did Roy kind of spearhead that whole thing?
No, I don't think so. He wasn't that type of guy to take charge of everything. He just did his part.
Mm-hmm. Well, he certainly did it extremely well, no doubt about it.
I heard one story that he did when he was recording with Max Brothers and Rose. I think it was the Water Baby Blues. I know you've heard of that song.
Oh yeah.
He did with Maddox's.
Yep.
They did twins with the mandolin and fiddle and Roy, and the Maddoxes, they wasn't that good at musicians, I don't think. They were having trouble getting their part, and Roy did the last cut laying down. He got tired and he laid down and did the last part.
That's funny.
The last cut. They had to cut and cut. If it wasn't right, they had to recut back in those days.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
That's
I heard that story.
Did it laying down. Boy, that's when you know you're a pro.
Yeah, because that was a hard tune to play. I still can't play it like him.
Man, that's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when Roy left the band, did you ever talk to him about some of the other guitar players that came along in the Strangers after him?
Well, we talked about Clint Strong. He said Clint Strong was one of the best guitar players he ever heard.
He was good. He had kind of more of a jazz flavor,
Yeah, he was more of a jazz player, but Roy really said nothing but good things about him.
Well, I know Clint was on our show, and he had all sorts of great stories to tell about Roy. And of course, Roy was still traveling on the road, for a couple years when Clint joined the group, and Clint told me it was kind of interesting. He said he didn't have the notion to be hired as the replacement for Roy Nichols. He was kind of, the sideman. He kind of took Tiny Moore's place, and then when Roy left, then Clint took over as the lead guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
But I've noticed since, Merle's had several guitar players since then, and they've all, tried to emulate Roy's style as best that they could, while still putting some of their own in there.
Yeah, no one ever fit Merle like Roy did.
That's for sure. That is absolutely for sure.
And Merle will tell you that himself.
I'm sure. Did you ever get to visit with Bonnie Owens at all?
I knew Bonnie, but I never did sit down and visit with her. But she was really a nice person as far as I could see. But I never did. I never did sit down and talk to her or nothing like that. No further than hello, how you doing, something like that. But yeah. She was really always pleasant and nice.
Absolutely. I've never heard of anybody say an unkind word about Miss Bonnie Owens. She was a dear. She was a dear. No. What were some of Roy's favorite recordings that he did?
He never talked about that much, but he did say he enjoyed doing the Bob Wills album that Merle did.
Oh yeah.
With Tiny Moore and Joe Holly and Eldon Shamlin, those guys. He enjoyed working with those guys on that album. Now Roy did work with Joe Holly on that album.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, Joe was on that.
Yeah, Joe was on there, and Eldon Shamlin was on there. Another guy Roy admired.
Yeah, no, Eldon toured with them for several years too.
Oh, did he? I didn't realize that. Eldon played with Merle?
Yeah, and it was about the late 70s until the early 80s. He was playing on the road with Merle.
I'll be darned. Boy, he was a good rhythm guitar player.
As was Tiny Moore, of course.
Oh yeah, I remember Tiny Moore was playing with them. Yeah.
Yep, and Johnny Gimbel was another one, and Gordon
yeah,
Terry,
Johnny Gimbel.
Gordon Terry, and Jimmy Belkin.
Yeah, boy, Gordon Terry, I liked his style.
Yeah, he was a very flamboyant player. I always thought.
He was different. I liked him though.
Oh yeah, man, he added a lot to that sound, no doubt about it.
He sure did.
You know, that's you talk about backing bands and things like that, and I've said this to some of the other strangers. You know, they, as far as I was concerned, they were stars in their own right, and they had they had their own following, they had their own sound, and they were able to step out and front the band and open the shows, and it just wasn't Merle Haggard if it wasn't Merle Haggard and the Strangers.
Yeah, that's right.
So you said you're playing and you're staying active in music, and I think that's fantastic.
Well, I play about once a month with this group.
Well, good for you.
It's a little 5-piece band that we play once a month, just whenever he gets jobs. He doesn't just take anything. He does casuals.
Well, that's great. That's great.
Oh.
Now, how many kids do you have?
2.
You have 2. Okay. Are they into music too?
No. No, they're not.
Didn't carry that on, huh?
No, they didn't. Well, my daughter plays bass, but she never was interested in playing in a band or anything like that. She got a good education and went into accounting, so.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's great. Well, Gene, it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I appreciate you reminiscing with me, and I know my listeners are really going to be interested to hear everything that you had to say, and I want to wish you the very best, and we're going to keep on playing that great country music.
Well, I hope you got what you wanted. I don't think I helped you a whole lot, but.
Well, I think you sure did. I appreciated talking to you. You had some great insights, and it was nice. It was unfortunate that I wasn't doing this show when Roy was still with us. I would have loved to have been able to talk to him, but sure, I'm glad that you took time to be with us. And I want to thank Steve Shelton for hooking us up and getting us together. That was real nice of him.
Yeah, he's a good guy, Steve. Steve, did you know he's a great, real good bass player? He's another reserve guy. Hey, that guy can play.
Wow, that's great. Well,
Steve Shelton, I've worked with him.
That's fantastic.
I love his bass playing.
Well, it was nice of him to reach out to us and put us in touch. And it's been a pleasure talking with you, Gene. I want to thank you so very much.
Okay, you take it easy then.
All right. We're going to play some more of the Strangers music for you, Mr. Roy Nichols, as we continue with My Kind of Country here on Fish Creek Radio. Thank you again, Gene Nichols.
Okay, bye.